Greetings. This is Arvette McLean with Speak, The Universe Listens. New ways to view age-old challenges. Change your thoughts, change your life. Step into the bigness of you.
Yeah, so I was having a conversation with some friends, and we were talking about a lawsuit or whatever, where it was like abuse on the child, like sexual abuse on the child or whatever. It was, and my friend was like, yeah, justice got to be had because that's going to affect them negatively. Like basically saying that's going to affect their mental negatively for the rest of their life. And it just like when I heard that, my brain was just like, it's like something can affect someone for the rest of their life. Like I was basically saying, I don't even want to put that out there that like something can negatively affect someone forever. Like that just sounded crazy in my brain. And so it just made me come to the topic of, we have a decision, because it made me think like it can affect you every day for the rest, like forever, and then also on the other hand, it don't have to, like you can make that decision. So it just brought me to the topic like, oh, I decide, like I can make that decision right now, like I don't want this, or whatever it is to affect me no more, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is so powerful and so true. Because when I think about my life, like, okay, say a house fire happened when I was 13 or whatever. The idea of that negatively affecting me for the rest of my life would also, like, I can't accept that either. So I'm with you. It's like, and I'm trying to figure out when did I stop identifying as a part of that? And then it dawned on me, I don't think I ever, like, that was literally nothing that ever even, that wasn't my identity, and so I never felt like I had to carry it with me for the rest of my life, because I always knew that, well, I'm more than like a house fire, or I'm more than like somebody who survived a house fire. Like that's just one of the many things in my bucket. So I think it definitely is a choice, and I think part of that choice is deciding how you want to value yourself. Like, do you want to identify yourself with that, or do you want to identify yourself as yourself? And that just happens to be a part of your story.
Yeah, and I was just thinking on it, and I was like, I can see how somebody can get there. And I was thinking like, what made my brain be like, I just can't put that on the rest of your life. And then something you told me a while ago, and we say it on here all the time, but it happened for you, not to you. And that just instantly made me think about that, because like it can just be a part of your story that led up to who you are now, or you can let that be your story forever. And no, like nah. So yeah, it's just like the biggest key with that is bringing it back to, hey, this happened for me, not to me. And you can take your power back from that, and you can make that decision at any time.
I agree with that. It made me think about like my story at one time was like, I used to tell people, how I grew up, had issues with my mom, and we never got along, and just it was just more of the things that I didn't get, like a young man that has mommy issues, right? Mm-hmm. So that was my story. Every relationship that I got into, this was my story. And then eventually I realized that, this could be my story, or this doesn't have to be my story, but it's my choice. So I can make the choice to switch it around and be like, hey, I can't create whatever I want to create, or I can just go ahead and stay in the place of, hey, this is it right here. So I realized that, eventually, like, I stopped telling myself, this is my story. This is my story. This is not my story. I have something totally different. So
it's crazy. I'm glad you said that, man, because I got a similar story.
Really?
Like, with my mom, like, me getting older and us, having little issues or whatever.
Right.
And I would always tell myself the same old story about that. Like, yeah, me and my mom, we just not close, or whatever the case may be. And, one day I just decided, like, that don't got to end. That don't got to be the ending of the story. Like, like it's still, So, yeah, I'm glad you said that. It made me think about that, because I remember just viewing it differently. Like, oh, that happened. That was just a part of the story. Like that, that's just what it was then. But it don't always have to be that. And yeah, I'm glad you said that. It made me think of that. Yeah.
And then when you said it happens for you, it happens for you, not to you. Knowing that, that just made me think, like, okay, so the story I've been telling myself, I said, this has been happening for me for a reason. What is the reason? Well, the reason is for me to realize it ain't my story. And that I always been telling myself. So I think that sometimes we just eventually, it'll take time, need to get ourselves in a space of realizing that we have the choice. And when we realize that we have the choice, I think that will put us in the mind state of understanding, hey, you can create whatever type of story you want to create. You don't have to be stuck to one story that you've been telling yourself.
Yeah.
Man, I like what both of y'all just said a lot too. Definitely about telling yourself a different story, because I know, okay, so growing up, I will be described by many people, not myself, as a sickly kid, There was a couple medical discrepancies that were happening in my life. And I would never forget, like, I remember the day vividly when I was 13 years old. I used to have to always go back and forth to the doctor for this and for that. And then I remember it was one day me and my mom were supposed to be going to a doctor's appointment in Columbus, Ohio. It was for like a specialist or something. I was like, I don't want to go. And I don't know what made her say okay that day, but she was like, okay. And I stopped taking certain doctor trips and I started feeling better. And I was like, well, I don't want to keep doing this anymore. I don't want to, I used to have chronic constipation issues. So I didn't want to have to keep going to the doctor to get this done or get that done. It's like, well, I'm just going to tell myself that, like, I don't need that anymore. And naturally the things started working on their own. Like, the body started repairing itself. And I think that is partially why now I think of my health like the way I do now, where I'm not too stressed about too many things, because I know that if I just let go, my body has the power to do everything I needed to do. And I know from firsthand experience of, I kept going to doctors and kept doing this and nobody could figure something out. And the day I decided I just don't want to feel that anymore was the day that I wasn't feeling that anymore. So I think about the story that you tell yourself so often, because now I tell myself and others a completely different story. Like, even in terms of like what I'm allergic to eating. Like, now I eat things, I go, I'll be all right though. Like, because I know I'll be all right.
So that's so powerful what you just said, and we definitely got to have a topic on that, because I'm actually experimenting with the stuff you said.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got to make that its own topic. But as far as trauma, so like for many years in my life, I identified myself as my trauma, and like all the abuse that I suffered, I decided the story that I was telling myself was that I was unworthy, that I was unlovable, that nobody liked me, that I was weak, that I didn't have much potential because my wings were clipped, and so I was afraid of everything, so I would never be able to do anything because I was too afraid to do anything. I was depressed. Like everything pretty much that you can think of, that was my identity. And I walked around in that identity for so many years. And I remember somewhere along the way, I don't know what made me kind of change my perspective, but I started saying, well, is there anything good that came out of it? And I was like, okay, well, I'm one of the nicest people I know. I'm one of the most compassionate people I know. I'm one of the smartest people I know. I'm one of the most resourceful people, one of the most creative people. I'm the toughest person I know. So I was like, all of that was because of the abuse that I survived. I'm resilient. If you got to take one person with you, that's me, because we gonna survive. Right? So I kind of like flipped the script on that a little bit, but at the same time, I still was carrying the story, right? Like, okay, so I'm a survivor. I'm a victim who survived. And so even though realizing that there were some good things that came out of it, I still was giving myself away to that story. And then I just started changing, like things just started changing in my life and in my thinking. And I remember thinking, I probably could give this story up. But then I was like, well, if I gave up this story, who would I be? Mm-hmm. Right? And I realized, I'm addicted to this story. This story is my comfort level. I don't know who I would be if I gave up the story. So then, even though I was feeling like I can give it up, but I couldn't give it up. Mm-hmm. I was too comfortable in that space. And I remember talking to my brother about it. And I was like, because of, these things, I'm nice, I'm smart, I'm resourceful, da 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 da. And he was like, what if you were already those things? Mm-hmm. You already all of that. You didn't have to have the abuse in order to become that. You were already that. And so it was like once he said that to me, it gave me permission to let it go, let the storyline go. And at some point I did switch it to, okay, this happened for me, because I started realizing that there were certain things I would never have done. Like it gave me a whole different perspective on life had those things not happened. So it's my unique identity for sure, right? I have a unique perspective on the world. And those things have got me sitting right here. And I love who I am today. And without that part of the story, I would be a different me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you said a lot of amazing things right there. But just to touch on the part where you said identifying as the trauma, it's crazy because it makes me think we do that every day. Mm-hmm. And I remember we was walking out of here and we we said hey or whatever to the doorman or the security person, whichever you want to call it, and it just made me think of how we greet each other. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, how you doing? Hanging in there or doing the best I can. Like, this is how our people talk to each other. Like, we greet each other with our trauma. Like, yeah, I'm just hanging in there trying to do the best I can. Like, all of these things. And it's like, what if we said, I'm doing great today? Mm-hmm. Like, what if we just decided then and there that we're doing great, and just, like we said, make that decision at that moment that I'm not going to identify as my trauma or what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You made me think, I used to have the biggest thing on holding a grudge and just holding on to the story that, like Arvette was saying, if I let the story go, then what? Like, who am I? What can I tell people? You know what I'm saying? So, just recognizing that whatever you want your story to be, that's exactly what it's going to be. So it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be in a place of trauma. Why not be in a place of abundance, love, happiness, joy,
Yeah,
And like, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you're gonna tell a story, make it a good one.
Yeah, man, good one.
And yeah, it's because like you said, holding on to that story, and like you said, holding a grudge. I used to hold on to my story, like, oh, this gonna fuel me to do this and that. Oh, I'm gonna prove these people wrong, and these type of things. But it's kind of dangerous. I'm not using that literally, but it's not the best way to look at it, because when you don't have those things, then what's fueling you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I can do these things without that being the battery in my back. So it's like, we don't have to hold on to our story like this is what makes us. When we can decide today, hey, this is my new story.
But this topic also makes me think about, I had said it to you guys before, that even like our worst moments, like if you combine all your worst moments together, I'll use myself, like, let's say I'm 27 years old. If I take all my bad days, it might only equal up to about 3 months. So if I think about it like in that standpoint, even, it's like, well, this is literally just a moment. So I don't have to stay here or have to feel like this is my story for the rest of my life, or this is all I'm going to know for the rest of my life. I just need to remind myself, like, even if I am struggling to get to it happen for me and not to me, then I can tell myself, well, this is only, it's just that fast. Just that fast. And just as fast as I feel bad, it's just as fast as I can change it and feel better as well. Is something I've been learning lately.
I know it is so true. Like, whatever happened, it happened in an instant, or depending on what it was, over a short period of time. But when you said that it's only 3 months of your life or whatever, someone like me would cringe, like, because that was my whole life, day by day by day. And I just remember being just so miserable that I didn't know how I could make it through the next minute. And so being that miserable for years on end, and always believing that it was because of something somebody outside of myself did to me, carrying that around just for years. And then to hear someone say in an instant you could turn it around, like, if that had, well, I can't say I turned it around in an instant, but had I heard that back then, I would be like, you got to be out of your mind. What you're saying makes no sense to me. It does not compute. And like, for me, it was a process, but I didn't know then what I know now. And so knowing what I know now, like, I feel like I had never heard the stuff that I'm talking about today. I had never heard of before back then. And so my hope is that by me sharing my current knowledge, that it could help someone skip the years and jump to a place where, they realize that it's for them, not to them. That they realize that, it did happen in a moment, and we're carrying something with us for years that happened in a short amount of time. So even though, like, my abuse did go on for years, by the time I was like 14, I didn't really have the day-to-day abuse anymore. And so, but I still carried it on for years and years beyond that. And like you said, a lot of people do carry it through their entire life. And they don't see a way out.
I think mine was like, it was like a trickle. It just, an effect. It kept going down and down and down. Because, like, my mom, she had a rough childhood, a childhood of trauma, poor and lack, and not even, imagining like the things that I have now. Can't even imagine having that. And so, from me coming from that, I took on that same identity. And then, you know, after I started to learn this type of information, what we talk about, I was like, dang, man. It was hard for me to share it because then it was like I was in the midst of leaving that. But yeah, when I started to share it, then it's like, dang, I sort of get dragged down because people won't really, like, the people I love wasn't familiar with hearing that. So then it put me in the space of that. Do I really want to, you know, it was a transition to this side to be the better version of me, you know? And I realized that, yeah, I do. So by me wanting to do that, that made me think of, okay, well, all you have to do is just be it and be fine with knowing that people may not understand you. You can't force nothing on nobody. Just be it. My biggest problem was letting that go. You know, can't force nothing on nobody, but let it go and just be, and you'll see how happy you'll be when you do it.
I guess you opened up by saying it's up to us to make a decision. We can decide if we're going to carry it with us or if we're going to stop it in its tracks. And, you know, when you decide to stop it in its tracks, your life just changes in such a beautiful way, and you just start blossoming in ways that you never really thought you could or would, because you had that cloak covering you, but you were already worthy, and you were already lovable, and you were already likable, and you were already strong, and you were already creative, and you were already nice, and you were already good enough, and you were already all those wonderful things. But then that will allow you to see it in a more beautiful and comprehensive way. So, good topic, Rodney.
Thank you.
That was good.
Yeah. So thank y'all for joining us, and we look forward to chatting with you soon. Until then, this is Arvette.
And this is Steve.
Teron.
Rodney.
Bye, y'all.